지금부터 KPBM의 NIH 웨비나 Find Your Collaboration Opportunity를 시작하겠습니다. 여러분 안녕하십니까? 저는 오늘 웨비나의 사회를 맡은 제약바이오협회 글로벌 팀장 김한곤입니다. 이른 아침 온라인으로 자리에 참석해 주신 여러분께 감사드립니다. 본 웨비나는 동시 통역이 제공됩니다. 화면 오른쪽 하단의 지구본 모양을 클릭하시어 영어 또는 한국어 채널을 선택하여 주시기 바랍니다. 통역 채널이 보이지 않는 분께서는 줌을 최신 버전으로 업그레이드한 뒤 재참여해 주시기 바랍니다. 금일 웨비나는 우리 제약바이오 기업들과 미국립보건원 NIH와의 R&D 협력 기회를 모색하고자 기획되었습니다. NIH 국립암연구센터 내 기술이전센터 연구개발마케팅본부 마이클 세겔러 총괄 감독께서 NIH 소개부터 사업개발 기회, NIH와 협력 시의 점 및 고려사항 등에 대해 발표해 주시겠습니다. 모든 발표가 끝난 뒤 실시간 질의응답도 이어지니 발표 중간중간에 질문이 있으신 경우 하단의 Q&A 창을 통해 남겨주시기 바랍니다. 참고로 본인께서 참석자께서 질문을 하시고 싶었던 내용을 다른 분께서 질문을 하시면은 좋아요 기능을 사용해서 이 질문의 순서를 위로 올릴 수가 있습니다. 그래서 본인께서 관심이 있는 분야의 질문이 있으시면 좋아요 기능을 활용해 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 그럼 연자분을 모시겠습니다.
Thank you and good morning. I'm going to share my screen and then we will begin. So I would like to thank the organizers, the KBPMA and KIMC, for hosting us here today to talk about technology development and commercialization opportunities with the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. This shows our campus and also the campuses behind me. We have several parts of our mission. Starting from the bottom left, we conduct research. We're the largest basic biomedical research center in the world. And some of those ideas need to be patent protected with intellectual property resulting from that. And we utilize that to work with company partners to develop and commercialize those technologies. By working with company partners, we can attract new research and development resources, allowing us to do even more groundbreaking medical research. We are funded by the US government, and so we're the result of a public investment. And like any other type of investment, the US government would like to see a return on that investment. And that is twofold. One is benefiting public health throughout the world. And the second return on public investment is to stimulate economic development. So we're going to focus on the relationship between benefiting public health and also stimulating economic development, in this case, with our Korean partners. So why do business with us? We have a lot of well-known and well-regarded researchers and Nobel Prize winners, the most recent in 2020. Reuters, a major press syndicate, has voted us last year the #1 global innovator in the government sector. So we have an annual budget of around 41 billion US dollars. Most of that, about 90%, is provided around the world through academic grant funding. About 10% of that funding remains on our own campus that you see and helps fund the efforts of 6,000 scientists. We leverage the work we do by working with companies, and we have currently well over 300 partnerships, and we'll be describing that relationship more specifically in the coming slides. Although we're the largest basic biomedical research center, We also do translational and clinical research. We collaborate with industry, and although we certainly do a lot of collaborations and partnerships and publications with academia, it's going to be our work with industry, entrepreneurs, and investors that we're going to focus on today, working together to commercialize our technologies into medical products. So the top 6 business opportunities to work with NIH are shown here. We're going to focus on the one shown in black, and that involves licensing of NIH technologies into company pipelines and collaborations, partnerships with our scientists to develop and commercialize technologies. Scientists on our own campus, that is known as the internal or intramural NIH faculty. You can also get grants and contracts from us. NIH does buy a lot of products, goods, and services. We also have services that we provide to our partners. And we also have a number of health and technology-based information sources, but today we'll be concentrating on licensing from us and partnering with us. So there's a number of misconceptions about working with the National Institutes of Health. One I've already mentioned, which is that we only do basic research, when actually we do translational work and we have an extensive clinical trial program. We don't just study biology and chemistry, simple drugs. We also work with company partners to develop medical devices, diagnostics, biomarkers, wearables, tools, and digital and e-health. You do not have to be located in the US for us to work with you. We partner internationally. So for the Korean companies and other stakeholders on this presentation, you do not need to be located in the US to work with us. Again, we don't just work with academia. We have hundreds of industry licenses and partnerships. And we don't just develop ideas and technologies that we come up with. You can come to us with your technology and your ideas, and then we can work to develop them together. A few examples of some of the most medically important products that we've developed with our company partners are shown here. One is Gardasil. It's amazing. It's the world's first preventative cancer vaccine. Even 10 or 15 years ago, it would be amazing to think that you could vaccinate your teenager to prevent them from developing cancer. That's a technology that was originated within the National Cancer Institute, and we worked with Merck to bring it to market. Another important product that we helped develop is Velcade. This is for a rare type of cancer called multiple myeloma. So if your company is working in an area that is considered a rare, neglected, orphan, or pediatric disease, we have a special interest in those areas because they represent an especially significant unmet medical need. And we certainly help develop lots of products outside the cancer realm. An example here is Spravato. It's actually a nasal ketamine-based treatment for a number of mental health issues, such as depression. So this is just a small sampling of the medical products that we've brought to market to help address global health. So I mentioned that we do a lot of research, and some of those studies are turned into intellectual property. And those technologies, those assets are available to you for licensing and collaboration. Again, they can be therapies, they can be devices or diagnostics, they can be wearables, digital health, e-health. We collaborate and license on vaccines. We have a number of research tools that we can make available to you, and we'll describe that more in a few minutes. And we also have software available. So most of our technologies that we have available are preclinical. That is, they have not had human studies yet. Some of them, though, are at clinical stage. So we do have a number of research tools. Those are things like animal models, antibodies, and reagents. So these are, and also software, and these are things that are non-patented, and they're available to companies on a non-exclusive licensing basis. It's just another way that we can help you develop your ideas. So here's how we're organized and the scope of our work. So as you see on the left, we do a lot of studies with treatments of disease, but we also study how to control disease and disorders, how to survive and the results afterwards, basic understanding of those diseases and disorders. For example, what causes them, what are the risk factors, and how to prevent them. And we also have a lot of studies with a lot of company partners on how to detect that disease and how to diagnose disease. So NIH is the National Institutes of Health. Underneath the NIH are 27 what you could call subsidiaries, 27 institutes, and those are usually organized around a disease, such as cancer, or an organ system, such as the National Eye Institute or the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. The office that Emily and I work in is the National Cancer Institute, shown in orange. We are also responsible for licensing and partnerships with the scientists and clinicians from 9 other institutes and centers. Those are shown in green, such as the National Institute on Aging, the National Eye Institute, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and others. If your company or your investment, or if you're an entrepreneur, your next company is going to be focused on a disease or disorder in the areas shown in orange or green, then our unit would be the one who would help you out. For the ones shown in white, such as infectious disease like COVID, diabetes, lung disease, metabolic disease, heart disease, neurological disorders, any of the ones shown in white, if you reach out to us, we will provide you an introduction to the point of contact in the institute that is directly relevant to the focus of your company. So we can be your point of contact, your door to knock on, regardless of which of the 27 institutes your company or your investment is focused on. So we have a number of different types of agreements shown on the right, depending on what your interest and needs are. It's important to point out that you don't need to know all these different types of agreements and licenses. We will help you determine which agreement or license is best for your needs. So we will do a needs assessment to identify what works best for you. Most of these agreements will address a technology need or gap in your company and or a knowledge gap in your company. Now, how does a partnership work? Well, usually both sides contribute effort and both sides contribute to the financial support of the partnership. So it is a cost-sharing relationship. We provide, though, with most of these partnerships, indirect or in-kind support. So when we award someone, a company or an academic center, an NIH grant, we are funding them directly. We are providing funds directly to them. Indirect or in-kind support is when we are spending money on their behalf. For example, you might have an interesting drug, and we might have an animal model that can test that drug. Your company would be responsible to manufacture and test the drug. Once we receive the drug, we would pay all the costs of doing the animal study. So we're not giving you money, but we are spending money on your behalf because we're paying for the animal study out of our own budget. We also have agreements that enhance your pipeline. It could deepen your pipeline, or in the case of a new company, if you're an entrepreneur or investor, it could start your company by licensing technology from us. It's important to point out that we are not a contract research organization. That is to say that if you have the money to do a study and you're just looking for a key opinion leader to do the work, then we may not be the right place for you. The work that we do, the partnerships we enter into, has to be a sharing of ideas and effort, not just money. And we don't do sponsored research. So we don't take in money just to do research without a technology development and commercialization goal. Now, what are the advantages of you to work with us? Well, it's severalfold. You get access to unique reagents and resources. Again, things like mice, antibodies, software, etc. You get access to our thought leaders. If regulatory input is needed, we can bring in people from the US FDA to help weigh in on the proposed collaboration. And those collaborations have no overhead or indirect rate. So there is no profit that we put on a project beyond the cost of actually doing the study. If a collaboration does need milestone payments, and if it comes to market, royalties, those are reasonable. If we work together and we develop new intellectual property or IP, it is jointly owned. However, you get an exclusive license option to take that new technology into your pipeline. We cannot create or spin out companies. So if we create new intellectual property together, you would be the only ones who have the right to get an option for that technology. When we license, you will find that our business and financial terms are quite attractive. We do not take equity. We do not ask for ownership in your company. And we negotiate under fair value for the public dollar. the public meaning the money that we get from the American public. So we're not trying to maximize how much money we get from you. Now, certainly there's advantages for us. You get access to our cutting edge innovations. I'm sorry, we get access to your cutting edge innovations. We get access to your commercial development expertise. We're not experts at getting products from the bench to the bedside to the market. You are. So we depend upon you to help get this to the patients who desperately need it. In certain cases, the project is allowed to bring in additional funding. And so certainly partnerships can be a way that we bring in additional funding. But most importantly, by working with you, the advantage that we get is the satisfaction of seeing important medical innovations get to the patients who desperately need them. Now, I mentioned that we do clinical work, and that certainly is the case. We're actually the largest hospital devoted completely to clinical research. And part of our hospital system is shown on this slide. At any one time, we're actually running over 1,000 clinical trials. Almost all of them are first in human. That means that they are promising technologies that have not yet been tried in patients. They need clinical validation. These trials, they involve everything from common diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, and breast cancer, to orphan, neglected, pediatric, and rare diseases. They all involve diseases or needs of high public health impact. Now, we're also the world's largest holder of investigational new drug applications. Most of the time, the companies that we do trials with prefer holding the IND. You do have the option of having NIH do this if you would prefer. You can also enter into clinical trials, not just to study treatments and therapies, but to study how diseases occur, the pathogenesis of a disease. Also things like the diagnostics, preventive measures, etc. You can work with us in our clinical center to develop state-of-the-art diagnostic, preventive interventions, and not just therapeutic treatments. And you can be assured that those studies are being done in an ethical and efficient manner with high scientific quality. So let's look at some case studies of companies that have worked with us, how that's come to pass, how that works, and the result for our partners. I mentioned that we do not have to work with companies in the US. This is an example of a company that began in the US and then opened a Japanese subsidiary. If you look at the top right-hand corner, you see an arrow going to the left. And so this was a technology that we developed and then brought to a company. And it's a company called Rakuten Medical. That's a clinical stage biotech company developing anti-cancer photoimmunotherapies. Two of our scientists, shown on this slide, came up with an exciting new way to treat cancer. And so in 2010, a company called Aspirion Therapeutics was incorporated in the US with the name Rakuten Medical. They received a direct funding grant from us through the SBIR, or Small Business Innovative Research Grant Program. And then they submitted a license application so they could start working with the technology. A year later, they entered into an exclusive license agreement for that technology. In the meantime, they collaborated with us to complete proof of concept studies, and those studies were needed for a clinical trial regulatory submission. And indeed, a few years later, a phase 1 trial began in head and neck cancer. The company grew and received sufficient funding that in 2017, it opened a Japanese subsidiary called Rakuten Medical Japan. In 2020, they had their first product approved and launched in Japan. And since it started, the company has raised over 500 million US dollars. Some of the things that we did with Rakuten Medical include supporting the translation of basic studies into commercial products. We provided indirect or in-kind support. For example, we helped fund the phase 1 trial. We provided thought leaders and technical support, and we licensed the technology at the core of the effort. As I mentioned, we also work with wearables, digital health, etc. This is an example, if you look at the white arrow, of a technology that an industry partner came up with and brought to us. And this company is called Simnology. They developed what you see here. It's a wearable belt to measure sleep disorders. It allows patients with sleep disorders to be studied in the comfort of their own home without having to travel to a sleep center. The company was looking for an academic key opinion leader to validate their device in a clinical trial. So we met the CEO at one of the conferences that we often attend. We met with him a few times to learn more about the technology. It was a fit with one of our internal research programs. We identified a clinician relevant to and interested in a collaboration, and in 3 months, they had executed a research collaboration agreement, and the study began. The company then used data from the trial to raise their next round of investment. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Emily Kroc, to talk about a Korean-based case study, as well as some other important information.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you all for providing us with the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I'd like to share a case study between us at the NIH and a company called Peptron, headquartered in Daejeon, South Korea. Peptron is a biotech company founded in 1997, developing peptide-based therapeutics to treat neurodegenerative disorders. More specifically, Peptron developed a sustained release formulation to enhance the long-term efficacy of delivering peptide therapeutics. So this collaborative story begins with researchers at the National Institutes on Aging, or the NIA, which is one of our institutes and centers here at the NIH. So researchers at the NIA discovered that a type 2 diabetes drug called exenatide could also be used to treat neurodegenerative diseases. And this was of interest to Peptron, developing their pipeline with sustained release formulations to treat neurodegenerative disorders. So Peptron and the NIA executed a collaborative agreement in 2014 to work together, developing a sustained release exenatide technology that was able to successfully cross the blood-brain barrier. And as a result, in 2018, Peptron was able to exclusively license the rights to continue developing this jointly formed technology as a neurodegenerative disease therapeutic. And this is a collaboration that is still ongoing today to continue developing this therapeutic in other neurodegenerative disease models. So in this collaboration, the NIA was able to provide the initial technology of exenatide, that diabetes drug, as well as R&D capabilities. In addition, we have provided mouse models to study other neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, traumatic brain injury, and multiple system atrophy. So this is another way that you can work with us through a biomedical materials license. And this would provide access to many different animal models for use in preclinical studies. So this would be a way you can expand your pipeline into new indications through a collaboration with us. And additionally, like I mentioned, we were able to exclusively license this jointly developed IP to Peptron as a result of the collaboration. That took place in 2018. And also in 2018, Peptron successfully raised $24 million to finance phase 2 clinical studies of this technology in Parkinson's disease, and as well as funding operations of a new GMP manufacturing facility to produce this sustained release exenatide as a therapeutic. Partnering with us at the NIH means working with our own intramural faculty on the research that they do every single day. This is not a special program like an application for grant funding. So in turn, this is not a competitive process. If a researcher at one of our institutes is interested in a proposed collaboration, then we can pursue next steps to work together. Because this is not a special program, there are also no application deadlines. If right now may not be the best time to work together, we welcome and encourage you to circle back in a year or 5 years from now, whenever seems appropriate to pursue a collaboration with us. Our doors will be open. So working with us can provide your company with indirect support. So we're not able to directly provide funds to your organization like a grant would. However, we can spend money on your behalf. So an example of this would be partnering together in conducting a clinical trial where a company can pay for the manufacturing of their therapeutic, whereas we fund the management of that clinical trial, the travel for the patients enrolled, etc. So if you're interested in pursuing a partnership with us, you can get started by contacting us via email or phone. We would ask that you prepare a small amount of technical information just to determine if your go-to-market strategy and area are a strategic fit for the research programs here at the NIH. We also recommend proposing a specific research plan about what you would like to do with us in a collaboration. And using that information, we can then identify investigators at the NIH that may be an appropriate fit to work with you. And then we can share that information with those investigators. And if they are sufficiently interested, we will pursue next steps to initiate a potential collaboration together. The NIH has assets and research programs in many areas of interest to the investment community. This figure is showing total venture capital raised in 2020 in US million dollars. That's shown along the x-axis. And listed along the y are the largest areas of venture capital investment in 2020. So among those, the most highly financed areas are oncology, neurology, platform technologies, cardiovascular technologies, immunology, and so on and so forth. Now at the NIH, we have research programs in all of the areas with a check mark to the left of it. So as you can see, whatever area your company is working on, if that is a research area of interest to the VC community, there is a very high probability that one of our research programs at the NIH is also working in that same area, and thus there is room for potential collaborations together. At the NIH, we are also very involved with getting products to the market. The NIH has accomplished 37 FDA approvals, and just within the National Cancer Institute alone, we have obtained 9 FDA approvals in just the last 5 years. Now, that can certainly compete with any large pharmaceutical company. Those 9 FDA approvals are listed on the screen here. So we do much more than basic research just to publish science papers. We certainly have a very high success rate of getting our biomedical innovations from the laboratory bench to the bedside. In addition to FDA approvals, partnering with us can also lead to funding or exit opportunities. The top box rather here on this slide is showing 2 companies that were founded on NIH technologies. The first, Altera, licensed a National Cancer Institute technology in 2020, after which it was able to raise $1.8 million in capital. Below it, you see Rakuten Medical, an example that Michael presented earlier in this talk. Rakuten licensed technology from us in 2013, after which they raised a total of hundreds of millions of dollars in capital. Working with us can also lead to mergers and acquisitions. Kite was a small biotech company, partially founded upon our technologies, that was later acquired by Gilead for $11 billion US. There's another company called Mist that was acquired by Turnstone just last year with undisclosed terms. And lastly, working with us can lead to blockbuster sales. Examples here are of products either licensed from us or co-developed with us and then licensed into a company pipeline. Now, these blockbusters are both in cancer as well as in other major indications. And you can see the 2021 worldwide sales of some of those tabled on the far right. Here at the NIH, we have a long-standing relationship with entities in Korea. Currently, we have 135 companies and institutes in our database as partners. We have 45 confidential disclosure agreements, 11 of which are between us and a company. We also have 6 cooperative research and development agreements, or a formal agreement indicating a collaboration, and 5 of those 6 are with companies. And we have 258 material transfer agreements, only 26 of which are between us and a company. So while we have relationships with many entities in Korea, we hope to expand this relationship and collaborate together even more moving forward. With that, I will pass it back to Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. So what you can see is that on the left-hand side is the geographical distribution of our partners. And it's a small percentage right now that we work with and have agreements with Asian companies and other similar entities, but we certainly hope to increase that. And right now, actually 40% of all our agreements are with for-profit entities, underscoring that we do work extensively with parties other than your typical academic center and research institute. So to start to sum up, how do you know if your company is relevant to what we're doing and ready? Well, do you see NIH as a partner or a customer? NIH does buy a lot of goods and services. However, the tech transfer offices, such as the ones that Emily and I work in, we're solely focused on partnerships and not sales. Is your technology relevant? Does it address an unmet medical need? And part of that equation is regulatory approval needed. If you're working on a medical solution that can be sold direct to consumer, say over a website or over the counter, typically that's not a focus of ours. It's going to be something that needs to go through the SFDA, the FDA, the European Medicines Agency, etc. Companies ask us, how big do we need to be? Well, you need to be big enough that you can devote the necessary time and staff to negotiate an agreement. Can your company develop the result of our work together? Again, we're not permitted to start companies. So any new ideas that we come up with together, you need to have your own pipeline that you are moving towards the market. And then is your company large enough to support a collaboration or license? Do you have enough people to put in the necessary work for the collaboration? Do you have enough money to pay for your share of the work or your share of the license? So those are some questions you can ask to see if right now are you in a position to work with us. We have what we consider a commercialization-friendly business model. We view you in industry as partners, not as a source of revenue. We really want a relationship to exchange ideas and effort. Again, we don't just take in money to take in money. If we get a product to market together through your development and commercialization efforts, we use any money that we take in to reinvest in biomedical research. It's not profit for us. And we actually have a statutory preference to work with small business. We work with hundreds of small businesses. You do not need to be a large pharmaceutical company to work with us. So what's our value proposition? If you added up all the product sales in the US from technologies either co-developed with NIH or licensed from NIH, it would actually come to over $7 billion. We don't take a piece of your company on a license. We do not take equity. We don't have an overhead rate or a profit margin on collaborations. If you come in with your own technology, your intellectual property stays yours. We won't take it. You have the opportunity to validate your technology preclinically or in humans. You get to work with world-renowned researchers and excellent resources. And NIH is a very well-respected brand. Collaborating with us can raise the profile of your company. So contact us and let's explore working together. The organizers have a PDF version of this presentation that they would be happy to share with you. You can also reach out to them or us if you would like more information. We'll have an introductory call. If you have some people on your team who would like to hear a shorter version of our presentation, we'd be happy to do that. We do go to conferences due to budget restraints. Those are mostly limited to the US, but if you happen to be at a conference, let us know. We might be there. If you look on the right, we have websites about our technologies, our assets, as well as how partnerships work. And you can sign up for alerts and other social media outlets to be kept up to date on what's going on at NIH. On the left, you have my contact information in the National Cancer Institute. And you also have contact information for Steve Ferguson, who works in our main office, overseeing the 27 offices. So he works at the NIH Office of Tech Transfer. You're welcome to reach out to us anytime. Or again, you're welcome to contact the organizers in order to get a hold of us. So with that, I'm going to conclude and stop sharing my slides. And again, we would, on behalf of Emily, would like to very much thank the KPBMA as well as Kimco for giving us the time to speak with you today.
헬겔러 박사님 그리고 크라크 박사님 좋은 발표 감사드립니다. 오늘 발표에서도 말씀해 주신 것처럼 우리가 NIH에 대해서 기초연구기관이라는 이해는 굉장히 많았지만 중개연구나 임상연구 그리고 또 이것을 상업화하는 데 있어서 우리 업계에 지원을 제공할 수 있는지에 대해서 또 몰랐던 부분이 분명히 있었던 것 같고 오늘 발표를 통해서 이러한 어떻게 보면 잘못된 오해들을 조금 이해할 수 있었던 그런 좋은 자리였던 것 같습니다. 앞서 말씀드린 것처럼 이어서 질의응답 시간을 가지도록 하겠습니다. 그 화면 하단에 있는 Q&A 창을 통해서 질문을 올려주시면은 저희가 연자들께 질의 내용을 질문 드리도록 하겠습니다. 지금 현재는 그 질문해 주신 내용이 없어서 사전에 질문을 해주신 내용을 하나를 질의 드려 보도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 발표 내용 중에 그 규제 전문가의 접근이 가능하다라는 장점도 언급을 해주셨는데 예를 들어서 FDA 같은 곳에 상호 협력한 케이스가 있는지 어떠한 사례가 어떠한 방식으로 FDA와 협력을 해서 이런 규제 전문 의견을 접할 수 있었는지에 대해서 설명을 주시면 감사합니다.
Yes. So the regulatory expertise that we can bring into a partnership does not replace the regulatory expertise in your own company. It also does not replace any of the formal meetings that you would have with the FDA. However, we want to make certain that the studies that we do are being done in a way that will lead to a clinical study being cleared by the FDA. So when it is needed, we can bring them in to help give their opinion on whether or not the proposed studies would be looked upon by the FDA as supporting an investigational new drug application for a first-in-human study.
네, 답변 감사드립니다. 추가로 다른 질문이 있으신 분들은 Q&A 창에 남겨주시기 바랍니다. 지금 질문 들어온 내용을 질의드리도록 하겠습니다. 만약에 한국 회사에서 연구 중인 제재에 대해서 비임상 개발을 공동으로 하는 파트너십을 제안한다면 NIH는 이러한 구조에 대해서 수용이 가능한가요?
Yes. Yes, the technology can be derived from a Korean company. The company can be located in Korea, and it does not need to have any presence, such as an office, such as a satellite facility in the US. That is not necessary for a partnership or a license.
예, 답변 감사드립니다. 제가 약간 클래리파이를 하기 위해서 조금 더 그 질문자분의 그 질문의 포인트를 다시 언급을 하자면은 그 한국 위치에 있는 것에 한국 회사로서의 제한점을 갖는다기보다는 아까 말씀드린 것처럼 연구 중인 제재에 대해서 비임상 개발을 함께 공동으로 하는 이 파트너십, 이 구조 자체가 NIH에서 환영하는 그런 포설인지에 대한 질문이었습니다. 그 한국 회사가 이런 부분에 있어서 엘리지블한
Yes.
건 잘 이해했습니다. 네, 감사합니다.
Yes. Yes, we do collaborations at many different stages of preclinical technology development.
질문이 없어서 제가 질문 하나 드리겠습니다. 그 계약적 법률적 질문인데요. 지금 이러한 구조에서 통상적으로 이라든지 아니면은 라이센스 어그리먼트를 체결하는 구조로 같이 협업을 할 수가 있는데, 이런 그 연방 정부의 펀드를 받는 기관으로서 이 계약에 있어서 조금 가변도가 있는지, 계약 체결함에 있어서 융통성을 가질 수 있는지가 궁금합니다.
I'm not certain what you're asking. We receive the government money, and our faculty has a lot of independence in what research collaborations they enter into. And they are almost entirely based on their scientific interests. You know, I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure that I did.
To clarify my question, as a institution that gets a federal funding, I'm guessing that sometimes you're not at liberty to flexibly change the contractual format that you're accustomed to. So whenever you're negotiating a contractual terms or license terms,
Okay.
do you have the freedom to work with private companies? That's my question.
Yeah, so that is a good point. Because we are a government agency, there are certain provisions in our agreements that have to be in there. And there are certain provisions in the agreement that cannot go in. And so what I would say is, if a company is interested in a collaboration or license, and they want to see in general what that would look like, we could send them our template or model agreement for a license or a collaboration, and they can see from a legal standpoint what is involved in working with us as a public agency.
네, 감사합니다. 다음 질문으로 넘어가도록 하겠습니다. 합성 신약 공동 연구의 경우에 신규 타겟의 시작부터 예를 들어서 힛 물질 도출부터 비임상 또는 임상 연구까지 가능한지입니다. 그리고 이어서 NIH의 히트 물질 도출 플랫폼 활용이 가능한지도 질문이 있었습니다.
The answer is maybe, and it depends upon us understanding your technology a little better to see if we have a existing program that is relevant to your technology. If we do not, then it is unlikely that we can create a new research program just to conduct a partnership.
답변 감사합니다. 다음 질문 넘어가도록 하겠습니다. NIH와 비임상 및 임상에 대해 함께 연구를 수행하는 경우에 연구 비용은 NIH에서 부담하기도 하고 회사가 부담하기도 하나요? 라는 질문이 있었고요. 이는 협력 어떤 방향성이나 그런 협력 구조에 따라서 달라지기도 하는 건가요? 라는 질문이 있었습니다.
That is correct. So so let me actually say that every collaboration is a unique case. The most common type of partnership is where both sides are contributing effort and both sides contribute financial support. When you start to negotiate the agreement, you can talk about the financial terms of the agreement. That's a major part of the negotiation, so that you can make sure that it's something that you can both afford and also that's something that you are comfortable entering into.
예, 답변 감사합니다. 다음 질문으로 인공지능 신약 개발 플랫폼을 개발하는 회사의 경우에 이러한 플랫폼에 사용할 수 있는 NIH의 유전체 또는 화합물 또는 단백질 데이터 라이브러리를 제공받아서 R&D를 시작하는 이러한 구조의 협력도 가능한지에 대한 질문입니다.
Yes. Now, when a company has a platform technology, so when their technology could be applied to a wide range of diseases and disorders, what we need to do with them is to focus on specific diseases and disorders rather than trying to apply it all over the dozens and dozens of research programs that we have. So we would need to work with any company that has a technology that could be used for many different diseases to help identify and focus on specific projects. In general, though, we do work with companies with platform solutions such as AI-based solutions.
답변 감사드립니다. 아직 시간이 조금 남았는데 한두 질문 정도는 더 할 수 있을 것 같습니다. 궁금하신 사항이 있으시면 Q&A 창을 통해서 질문을 주시기 바랍니다. 질문 하나 더 드리겠습니다. 기업들이 함께 연구하게 되는 NIH 연구자들이 실질적으로 누군지 궁금합니다. 대학이나 연구소 연구자들이 NIH를 매개로 기업과 연결되는 건지 아니면 아예 NIH 소속의 연구자들인지.
In our case, it is the intramural researchers of NIH on our own campus that you see behind me. If there is an academic lab that is funded by the NIH and a company was interested in that academic research outside of NIH, the company would contact that university or research institute. So again, Emily and I and our work focuses on our intramural or internal faculty.
다음 질문 같은 경우는 제가 질의 내용을 사실 잘 이해를 못했는데 질의를 한번 드려보겠습니다. 어떤 기업과 협업할지 투자자들과 함께 정한다고 설명해 주셨는데 투자자들의 선택 권한이 어느 정도인지 궁금합니다. 이 부분은 혹시 연자께서 조금 팔로우업을 해주시면은 질의자께서 조금 부연 설명을 해주시면 좋을 것 같아요.
So for investors, we're talking about investors who are working with entrepreneurs to together start a new company. And that new company could decide to collaborate with us. The new company could also decide to use an NIH technology as the basis of their new company. So the role of the investor would depend on the relationship they have with the entrepreneur. It is separate from any involvement that we have.
예, 답변 감사합니다. 시간 관계상 지금 들어온 질문을 마지막으로 마무리를 해야 될 것 같습니다. 협력 프로그램에 지원한다면 어떠한 기준으로 선정하시는지 궁금합니다. 예를 들어 혁신성, 이충족 수요, 대상 황자군의 규모 등이 있을 텐데 어떤 항목을 중점적으로 볼지 궁금합니다라는 질문.
All those criteria are important. You only need one researcher to be interested in working with you, and then there's the possibility that we could partner. I do want to sort of correct a little bit of the terminology. They use the word apply or application. This is not a competitive process. If your company reaches out to us and we want to work with you, it doesn't matter what other companies are working in the same area. It doesn't matter what companies may be using similar technology. If you knock on our door and we like your technology, then we will discuss working with you. So it's not a competitive application. Yeah, so the things you mentioned, though, unmet medical need, impact on global health, things like that, they are important. Yes.
답변 감사드립니다. 이 시간 관계상 이것으로 질의응답 시간을 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. 다시 한번 연자분께 감사 말씀드리며 참석해 주신 여러분 모두에게 의미 있는 시간이 되셨기를 바랍니다. 웨비나가 끝난 뒤 이메일로 배포되는 온라인 설문에 많은 참여 또한 부탁드립니다. 이상으로 KPBM의 NIH 웨비나 Find Your Collaboration Opportunities를 마치도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다. Thank you, Michael, Emily.